We are looking for your ordinary moment-to-moment sense of existing. You somehow know you exist. It seems to be that you exist as a separate entity, and inquiry is trying to hone in on where that sensation, I use that word in quotes because it's not exactly a sensation, but sensation or feeling or knowledge or that light, that information, where in your experience is it coming from? And as you search for where that basic, very elementary, very ordinary knowledge is coming from, you're going to see your attention go to various things. Like, for example, it could go to your body. And the thing to notice then, or to ask yourself whenever your attention goes to one of those things is this something of which I am aware? And if it is something of which you are aware, then it cannot be that elementary knowledge of your being, or it cannot be you, for lack of a better word. Because what you are is aware of that. You're looking for you, the gazer, the seer, the observer. So anything of which you are aware cannot be you. If it were you, you would not be able to be aware of it. Because in order to be aware of something, there has to be a kind of distance between you and the thing, a boundary between you and the thing. So if that happens, which it will definitely happen, then to essentially repeat the question. If you need to repeat the question directly and say again, where is my sense of awareness, or where am I, or who am I? These are all the same question, basically. And surrender is a matter of basically keeping your attention in a very deliberate fashion from focusing on anything, essentially. So you are attentively defocusing on everything. And the way I always explain it is, it is as if there's a TV on in the background. That's everything that's going on out in the world, and also everything that's going on in your own mind, all your emotions, all your thoughts. And in surrender, you simply ignore them all. It doesn't mean you have to turn the TV off. You don't have to change the thoughts. You don't have to change the feelings. You don't have to reject the thoughts. You don't have to reject the feelings. They can all just be there just as they are, but you can just choose not to allow your attention to become absorbed in them. So you keep essentially reminding yourself in some sense that these are just phenomena that are passing, to not allow your attention to become seduced or absorbed by them, to not regard them as real, and by the same token, to not exert your willpower in responding to them, but rather to keep your willpower, which is really the same thing as your focus anyhow, relaxed, right? So you are using your focus and your willpower to keep your focus and your willpower otherwise relaxed. That's all that surrender is. You just keep that process continuously going, of continuously recognizing that whatever phenomena are occurring in your mental, emotional, and physical worlds, all of these are just passing light, white noise, irrelevant to you, and your job is simply to relax, like as if you were, an emperor or empress whose only job was to do nothing. That would be your only job in life. And, and you treat the person who you think you are as a third person, another entity, and let them deal with the responsibilities of life, or not deal with it as they wish, their problem. So that's surrender in a nutshell.
Maybe it is a strong attachment when it comes to pursuing my passion, like gardening. I'm really passionate about gardening. So sometimes that dominates my day. Like if I'm started now, the weather is becoming better. So I'm so absorbed into that sometimes the attachment takes a lot of energy from me. I'm so absorbed into that, I totally forgot. And again, I had to remind myself, oh, what am I doing? So how to balance it? For example, I find a new plant, I want to read about that. So much time goes into it.
Yeah. So, the truth is, it's never a question of balance. The whole point of self-inquiry and surrender in the end is the recognition that you're not Sri Devi.
Yeah.
Effectively.
Yes,
Right?
yes, yes.
So,
Yeah.
so, the passions that you think are yours, like gardening, are really not your passions, is the truth. You misidentify, so to say, with Sri Devi, who seems to exhibit those kinds of passions. And so, the reason the attachments are attachments is precisely because of the misidentification. And so, ultimately that identification needs to be attacked. And how do you attack it? Well, when you're doing inquiry, what it's pointing out to you is you don't know who you are. it can be and it should be a huge revelation and shock to recognize that you truly don't know who you are. You know, it's only because we just were like, yeah, I don't know who I am, but really, I'm Sri Devi, right? That's essentially how
Yeah,
it goes,
I
right?
think that
So,
is the challenge I find, dissociating from that idea of I'm identifying with that Sridevi is that is the biggest challenge.
well, no, of course. But look,
Mm.
the point is what you're illustrating is, identification is supported by attachments, and attachments support identification because
Yeah.
attachments essentially are based on the idea that I'm this person, right? And they
Mhm.
also distract you from practice because you become invested in those attachments. Like, oh yeah, I enjoy gardening. I want to be involved in gardening. I want to feel like I'm doing the gardening. I'm selecting the new plant. I'm learning this new cool thing. I'm seeing the
Mm.
plants grow and I made them grow or whatever it is, right? You know, all of that investment makes you feel like I need to focus. I need to put my focus. I need to put my focus on the gardening. So, it weakens over time when you subject those thoughts to the practice of inquiry over time, right? You start to think, well, who exactly is it that cares so much? Who is having these thoughts that I like gardening? I like gardening. Who's the I in that sentence? Who's the I in that thought, right? And then you look and then you're like, well, I don't know
Mm.
who I am, right? So as you see that over and over and over again, A, as you see that, B, as you do inquiry and you start to encounter greater amounts of peace, slowly the attachments will weaken. Because as you say, for example, right now, it's already easier to do inquiry than it was before in certain moments where you're doing chores or you're just taking a walk, right? So that's how it is, right? It's like water that's coming in, right? The practice is like water that's coming in, into a building, and it's like it goes into the weak points first, right?
Mm.
Those times where you don't care about the chores or you feel like, oh yeah, it's pretty automatic, right? Where you don't feel like I need to put a lot of my attention into this or I don't care about this thing that much, right? Or I'm just taking a walk. It doesn't really matter where my attention is, right? In those areas where areas of time where attachments are already fairly weak, it's easier to do the practice.
Mm.
Nevertheless, as you do the practice in those moments when you can, it will eventually become easier to do them, in the slightly more difficult moments and then the slightly more difficult moments than that, right? I have to say it's good you're already recognizing how much you're not doing the practice because that's
Mm.
already showing that you're attempting the practice, right? You're like, oh yeah, hours and hours went by, I didn't do it. But just to be clear, right? Our goal here is not balance.
Mm.
Our goal here is
Yes.
challenging the whole idea that
Mm.
you're involved in any of this stuff at all, right? And to
Mm.
recognize, right, at some level, right, this is another point of the practice. A part of the practice is it's going to make you more desirous eventually of knowing the truth. As the desire for liberation burns hotter and brighter, to that extent, the attachments will be less and less powerful,
Mm.
basically,
Mm. Mm. Mm.
because right now it's like, oh yeah, well, inquiry is nice, but gardening's pretty good too. you know, liberation's nice, but I also really like this TV show. Eventually,
Yes.
right? The desire for liberation it will be built into this huge bonfire where it's like, I don't care, right? Everything else can go, jump off a bridge. Like
Mm. Mm.
I need this, right? So
Mm.
that itself is a product of the practice, right? These are all kind of like chicken and egg type situations, right? But what happens is as you inject the practice into, like I say, certain weak points where it's easier to do, it will seep in. But good to recognize it, and you should recognize as well, right? Again, essentially these are choices that are being made, right? There's a
Mm.
kind of choice that's being made to focus on the gardening or your work or, like you say, new things that you're learning as opposed to the practice, right?
Mm.
And to the extent that you're doing that, you should recognize that's an obstacle to the goal of the practice,
Mm.
and
Mm.
and as you get more, if you feel more impatient about it, recognize that this is a game that you're playing. And
Mm.
every time, right, the attachments are winning right now, right? Basically, I mean, not every time, but
Mm.
most of the time, right? So,
Mm.
there's someone trying to, effectively trying to fool you into shifting your attention to this other random activity. And your
Mhm.
goal is, can you get your attention back? In reality, the way anyway it works is, your attention is going to flicker, which whether you like it or not, it's almost certainly going to flicker. But ideally, your attention should be, if you can, the ideal is completely focused on surrender or inquiry. And this other idea that gardening should happen, that's a thought. As soon as it arises, who's having the thought? Right?
Mm.
It's not that you're trying to do really, not that you're trying to do inquiry or surrender, quote unquote, while gardening.
Mm.
It's that you do inquiry or surrender. And if gardening happens, it happens. And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. You see what I'm saying?
Yes,
So,
yes.
so that's the ideal. Now, the reality is, you're going to see, if you've already seen how your mind will in fact flicker. And so you do the best you can under those circumstances. But you should try to view it as, ideally, as I'm trying to do it all the time. I'm trying to put my attention 100% on inquiry or surrender. And these other activities, the only reason they matter to you is because you think that you're a Sri Devi. Inquiry is challenging. You see what I'm saying? The reason you care about the gardening is because I'm enjoying this activity. But who is I?
Yeah.
That's the point, right? The moment you see, I don't know who I am, then immediately it calls into question why it is that I care about this, right? Everything that's cared about is cared about because we assume that I'm related to that thing, right? Like my family, my health, my career, my hobbies, right? My whatever it is, right? Me. But who is me, right? As soon as you see you don't know that, then suddenly all those things are like, well, why do I care about it actually?
Is it okay with carrying over your experience searching to the next search?
So look, so when you have your own experience, as soon as it's happened, it becomes a memory.
Yeah.
Right? So it then becomes like a thought, right? What we're looking for is what's aware of the thoughts. Because in that moment when you encountered the silence, it may have been a glimpse or something like that, perhaps. But as soon as you're thinking about it, now it's become this fossilized thing, and that you're then bringing in as this sort of like a preconception. But what you're looking for is what's the light that's aware of that. So I would suggest, rather than bringing in what you think you experienced the last time you did inquiry, to rather go back to that basic hunt, because it's a hunt. Okay. And what will happen is, what you already have seen, I think, is as you hunt the basic sensation, right? The fundamental basic sense of I-ness, I'm here-ness, I'm awareness, right? As you're looking for that, you will automatically much more quickly go to those deeper levels. You will learn to skip those initial levels, but you shouldn't do it, in my opinion, by trying to go to your memory of one of those deeper levels, but rather to look for the basic thing again, and then you will automatically go to those levels. So just recognize, right? You see the mind, what the mind is doing, right? The mind is touching on it, but the mind, it's like the mind again is like a two-dimensional, it can only deal with two-dimensional representations. And now it's trying to transpose something that is effectively 3D into a 2D space. So, so it's like, well, what is it? It's outside me, it's inside me, I'm standing apart from it, I'm with the silence is with me. It's like all these different like mental representations.
Yeah.
Right. And so you just have to recognize that the series of mental representations of that, they're all just thoughts. So all of them without exception. So to keep recognizing, like you say, the riddle is still going, right? I'm still hunting. And so that's great, yes. But just to recognize again and again, right? Even in these deep, intimate, powerful, subtle experiences, it is exactly like you're looking again exactly at a projector, okay? And the projector is projecting, these increasingly subtle slides. It's almost like, again, like, it's like on the movie screen, it's showing you like a picture of you sitting in the seats or something like that, It's like a picture of you sitting in the seats, but it's still a picture of you. You see that? Like, so to recognize, it might even be like a picture of the screen itself or something like that. There are these representations of the situation that you have to recognize, but this is still being projected by the mind. This is still anything which comes and goes, anything which wasn't there 3 seconds ago and will stop being there 5 seconds from now, is a thought.
Is it better to go instead of how is it happening or why? All these why, how, where, all these multiple questions come up. Which is a better question?
The point of the questions is not the question itself. The point is the experiential search, basically, right? That there is, right? When you recognize, okay, Sakshi Bhava, the witness feeling, right? Again, that sense of I'm a witness is itself being witnessed. Otherwise, how would you know it? Right? So you must be you, the you who knows yourself as the witness is somehow known. Where is that knowing, the knowing of the knower? And it doesn't really matter how you phrase it. The issue is that there is the light that's pouring in to your awareness, or that is you in some sense, and that you are directly aware of this. That is to say, this light is in your experience directly. The point is to attend to it, right? To turn your attention, attempting. I know it's, how do you find it, obviously, but it's there, right? It's there somehow. It's somehow there, and you are somehow aware of yourself, and so to feel your way towards it. So we can put it in 100 different ways. None of them are exactly right. Why is it? How is it? Who is it? Where is it? But the point is that it's the experiential, the recognition that somehow I know that I am. Somehow I know that I am, and I know that I'm aware of, let's say, being a witness. And that knowing, the knowing of myself as apart from whatever these experiences are, even if they're highly subtle experiences of, for example, being the witness, that knowing I know somehow, and where is trying to discern in your experience what exactly that consists of. So all the questions are kind of like going to have problems, but do you see what I'm saying? The point is, you somehow know it, and to turn it's like that light it's like a light that's coming from somewhere, somehow, and it's rooted in your moment to moment experience. And so can you isolate that, discern that, attend to that, hunt that, find that? That's the point.
Right. Looks like I'm making progress, but I'm not making progress. It goes back and forth.
Yeah. That's how it is. Exactly. You will see momentary flashes and glimpses. So that's exactly how it goes. And then then the glimpses themselves become objects of experience. And again, who is aware of them? Because again, it's like like a 2D sheet of paper, which you're looking at the 2D sheet of paper, and you're like, where am I? But again, like the mind is only able to absorb the 2D sheet of paper. So it's like searching, where on this 2D sheet of paper am I? That's why it comes to these contradictions, right? Like, it's like, I seem to be at every point, but at no point at all. I seem to be at all points, but it's at every point, right? That's because you're not actually on the paper, right? You're, again, hovering above the paper, looking down at the paper, but because the mind is that instrument which can only comprehend the paper. So the mind is looking, and when it looks, it's only looking on the paper. All it can do is keep going around in circles on the paper, But then these momentary flashes of like, oh, but there's some other way, which is non-mental, quote unquote, non-mental, which is that I'm actually not on the paper at all. That's why. It's because it's trying to represent that third dimension on a 2D space. It comes to these weird things. So yeah, it sounds like you're exactly in the right direction. But this is what it's struggling. It's like how, where, because it's not here, it's not here, it's here, it's inside, it's outside, it's everywhere, it's nowhere, Yeah, because it's trying to find it on the piece of paper.
Right.
Yeah. So you just keep hunting, keep hunting, keep hunting. This is the path, exactly.
Okay.
So my thing has been, the practice has been, it kind of has its, usual ups and downs, similar to what Sri Devi was alluding to. So the intensity, right? So I'm noticing, so when the intensity is very strong, right? I mean, even isn't that also an attachment? So that is one question. Then two is just abiding in awareness, and watching the scenery, I don't know, seems to be, like less turbulent, so.
Okay. So you have two questions. The first question is, isn't the intense practice itself an attachment? And the answer is it is. But the basic idea of the practice is you can't go to zero thought directly. You go to one thought. So we want one attachment. We want that attachment to be to spiritual liberation, and we want that attachment to consume all the other attachments, basically. So that's basically the principle of the practice. And so we want you to focus on the practice and the attachment to liberation as the thing that will lead you to first to relative peace. That relative peace will make you addicted essentially to the practice, and that addiction is a good addiction, sattvic addiction, and will weaken all the other attachments. And then eventually, as Maharishi says, it will be like the fire that used to light the funeral pyre, and then it will burn itself up. So that attachment will itself burn itself up in the end. So that's first question. Second question is what you're describing. So you say abiding in awareness or being aware of the awareness, abiding in awareness. I don't love that terminology. I'll tell you why. So anything which you're abiding in can't really be the awareness by the same principle of inquiry. Anything which you think you're abiding in can't be the awareness, because the awareness is aware of everything. Things you're abiding in, anything you think you're abiding in is a thought. Therefore, it's an object. Therefore, it's not the awareness. It's a subtle feeling which may feel like awareness, feel spacious or something like that, but it's not awareness, it's a thought. What you're describing sounds more in the realm of surrender. Remember, there's the other path, which is surrender, which is complete in itself. You don't need inquiry. You can go with surrender. And surrender is being aware without allowing your mind to be drawn into any particular thought, right? Withdrawing your mind from thought, not allowing it to rest in any particular thought, and not allowing it to take any particular thought seriously, and not allowing your willpower to be activated. So remember, this is an alternative. I would not call it abiding in awareness, however. I would call it surrender. I would call it continuously, detaching yourself from various thoughts. Yeah. So that's certainly an alternative. And you can mix and match, right? You can do inquiry until you're bored of it, and then you can do surrender, or you can just do surrender if you like. So, that is a powerful technique.
So let's say, you have a video game or a VR game, and there's a game character, and then there's a game player. And the game player misidentifies with the game character. Is one way of thinking about this. And actually, it's actually an automated game, and the game player is just an observer, right? So let's say that's the model. And so the question is, who is doing the inquiry? The game character?
Yeah, I mean,
game player.
Yes, it's the game character.
Game character.
That's right.
So the one who's sort of getting detached, or all the practices that you want to detach, etc., is all being done by the game character.
That's correct.
And at some point, because of whatever the game character does, at some point the misidentification of the game player to the game character gets resolved. Is that the idea?
Yeah, that's the idea. That's right. Exactly. I mean, it's all with an asterisk attached to it, because when the misidentification is quote unquote resolved, it will resolve in the knowledge that the misidentification never existed. So it's not like there is a real misidentification going on. There is something which the mind can't fully grasp. We want to put it in this sort of, we can't help but put it in these ways where it sounds like there really is a misidentification, there really is an ignorance, but in fact, there is not really an ignorance or misidentification. Rather, it's much more like it's like the one who misidentifies is itself also in the game. The misidentification is a thought, actually, and the one who misidentifys is also a thought, not real. And so, the whole situation is being observed. So it's not like the game player actually misidentifies. Actually, the one who misidentifies is also in the game. So, it's difficult to put your mind around this point because mind can't really because the whole point being there's a certain kind of like, you can view it as in some ways like recursive or fractal or something like that, if that makes it easier. But yeah, sure. That's a rough mental model, one possibility.